Call to order the, what day is it today? The April 12th, 2022 planning board meeting. Consistent with the governor's orders to extend certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to view and or listen to the meeting in real time. Persons who wish to do so are invited to click on the provided link. If you do not have a camera or a microphone on your computer, you may use the provided dial-in number and passcode. Please only use dial-in or computer and not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act. This location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodations and or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you're a person with a disability and require information or materials in an alternate format, or you require any other accommodation, please contact the town's disability coordinator, William Arnold, town engineer, at 781-246-6308 as far in advance as the event is possible. Every effort will be made to grant your request. Advanced notification will enable the town to make reasonable arrangements to remove an accessibility barrier for you. All right, roll call vote. Bill Spalding.
Here.
Jim Hogan.
Here.
Megan Menasali.
Here.
And Theo Knoll.
Here.
All right. Susan Odd and Aaron Kinder are also with us.
Matt,
Um,
before we start, could you make me co-host, please?
Yep, just
Thanks.
did. Unless I made you host, I don't.
Yeah, I'm
host, I don't
co-host.
know.
That's good.
All right.
That works.
Okay, first order of business is approval of meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the March 8th, 2022 meeting minutes? Anyone have any comments? All right, anyone want to make a recommendation?
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
So what's the date from
March 8th,
March 8th? Okay.
2022.
2022.
Meeting minutes as presented. Motion made by Bill Spalding, seconded by Theo. Roll call vote. Jim Hogan.
Yes.
Megan Menasali.
Yes.
Theo Knoll.
Yes.
Bill Spalding.
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right. Do I hear, has everyone received the March 22nd, 2022 meeting minutes? All right. Megan, you were not here for this, but you have reviewed the meeting minutes.
I have.
All right. Did you happen to watch the video also?
I did not.
Okay. You may want to catch yourself up on that just so we don't have any issues with people not being eligible to vote when it does come time for voting on Stark Ave. Do I hear a motion to accept the March 22nd, 2022 meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right. A roll call vote. Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes.
and myself, yes. We also, we did do the site walk on March 30th. There was only Bill and I present, so we did not officially have a quorum. We didn't have a quorum, so we did not officially have a meeting. But I did want to have notes that we attended that just for the record. So, Bill, do you want to make a motion to accept the March 30th site walk notes as presented?
For Stark Ave, yes.
Stark Ave.
Yeah, so moved.
And I'll second that. Roll call vote. Bill
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right. All right, so it is 7:05. We have a public hearing, continuation of Stark Ave definitive subdivision. I see Peter and Blaisdell and Joe Mann are with us. All right, Peter, I know still waiting on some reviews from engineering.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So Peter Blaisdell for the applicant P&G Utilities. We were hoping to connect with Bill and Tim yesterday, just it didn't work out. So just to bring it to speed, I think everybody knows that we had a public site visit on March 30th with the Conservation Commission down at the site. And yes, I believe Erin was there and yourself and Mr. Spalding were there, as well as members of the public. Got to walk around and it was a good meeting. I mean, I think everybody got a chance to walk around and kind of see where features that they've been looking at on the plans actually lie on the ground. Lot of questions, a lot of interrogatories, that type of thing. But other than that, I think it was good to have everybody come out and take a look at it and just, you know, ask any question that came into mind. Since that time, Mr. Chairman, we've done additional topo around Mr. Howe's house. He was kind enough to let our surveyors on there to kind of do a detailed topo, just in response to, you know, making sure that once those pieces of pavement are removed from his property, that the concern is that everything will get to the other catch basin down at the end of Stark Ave. One of the other questions that was raised was just the location of the intermittent stream. So we went out and we located that. And we showed that on another notice of intent rendering that we sent over to Elaine and to Rebecca. I believe I copied you on it, Mr. Chairman, just showing a rough colored in sketch, just kind of showing you where that was.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that we had left really to do for field work, Mr. Chairman, was just to GPS in a couple of points so that we can add the Mass State plane coordinates to the plan as required by the Wakefield rules and regulations. So Tim and Bill did send over some comments about a week or so ago. Most of them have been ironed out, but we still have a few other things that we need to. So I was hoping we could meet yesterday. It just didn't work out. So I don't really have anything further to report on that as far as you know, where he is. I mean, a lot of the issues that we addressed are now considered addressed. They just have a few more questions for us and maybe a few more calculations they want us to do. But other than that, I don't have anything else really to give to you. No real updated plans. I was gonna not waste your time with giving you an interim set until we get everything ironed out, and then you could just see one final set.
All right, so there will be a revision coming out with the requested changes and details and things.
Yes, so just to go over real quick, you know, some of the things that are upcoming on the next set of plans would be, as you brought up when we were out there, you know, can you please give us some more illustration and details on, you know, how we're going to kind of micrograde around that cul-de-sac in front of Mr. Howe's house. What type of walls are we going to be looking at for the different features on the site? I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing I forgot, I checked my notes. At the last hearing, Mr. Hogan had a sketch that showed the two trees from the south side that were kind of up on the wall moving over to the north side. I couldn't remember if that was what we wanted to do, or if you said maybe we would scrap the trees altogether and a donation would be made to the street tree fund. That was the only thing I was going to ask you tonight, is how you want to clarify that. If you want, hang on one second. If you want to let me share my screen for a second, I can show you what I meant. Somebody just wants to give me the authority for a moment.
Yep, Peter, you can go ahead and share
Okay,
now.
thank you. Let's see. Everybody see this here?
Yep.
Okay, so there were two trees here, one here and one here, and I believe Mr. Hogan, I took a picture of it, it's probably not 100% accurate, but I believe we suggested moving a tree here and a tree here. However, I do remember a comment, I can't remember if it was from you, Mr. Chairman, or if it was somebody else, said that you weren't really wild about the idea of having tree easements, and that maybe the tree should be eliminated altogether and we just make a donation to the street tree fund. That was the only public street tree fund. That was the only thing I couldn't remember. I apologize for not taking better notes.
Yeah, I don't think we actually cleared that up. It was something that I put out there. That's so I think it's something we still need to, as a board, to discuss how we want to handle that. Just from experience, trees get lost once they get on private property, even with an easement. But I'm not opposed to it either. So in this case, you're going to have a homeowners association, so it can be a little bit tighter than just an easement that no one's ever going to see. So, you know, it's up to the other board members how they want to handle this. Again, I can go either way with it. So.
If you want to have a quick discussion about it now and see what the will of the board is.
Sure.
It hasn't been set in stone yet, so now would be a great time to do it. I think the applicant's okay either way.
All right, Jim, I know you have some comments, feelings on this.
Yeah, what I would advocate for is I think the observations as it relates to an easement and the enforcement of said easement in perpetuity being inconsistent. I don't think that an easement would be an appropriate mechanism for this. With that being said, I do think from a policy perspective, I think having the trees go in day one is a benefit to the community, and I think that we should advocate and we should have that continue to be part of it. So the trees would go in day one with no easement would be my preferred solution. Open to recommendations from other members of the board, but as a starting point, that's where I think we should go based on the feedback and discussion we had from the last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, since it's going to be a homeowners association, it probably having both would be a little bit redundant. So, and having easements that are just out there floating around aren't necessarily the best things for anyone. So, I don't know how the other board members feel about this. Everyone fine with it, or how do you want to go with it? Theo, I think you had your hand up first.
Sure. No, I like Jim's solution. Yeah, it makes sense not to have an easement, and I think it was just it was a good suggestion to try to keep at least one more tree and relocate a tree, so, or two trees. So I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Just while we're talking about trees, and I understand the complications of tree easements, they just don't seem appropriate, as Jim and others mentioned. I do, after on the site, while we're on the site walk, I know Mr. Howe mentioned the bee tree. Peter, was that something that he brought up with you as well?
I don't think he brought it up at the site visit with me. I believe he brought it up at the one of the prior public hearings, but
Yeah,
not at the site visit, Mr. Spaulding.
he did, and he mentioned how that tree is just nested with tons of bees, and I didn't know if that was pointed out as something that was part of this plan that could be saved. Honestly, I can't remember exactly where it sits. It seems like it sits right past the creek, along where the new road is going, if I remember correctly, but I'm not totally sure.
No, I believe it's actually just past the end of Mr. He's on. Maybe he could tell us better. I believe it's just past the end of Mr. Howe's fence. So there's no way to save that tree.
Right, where you can see where the creek is, right past the creek on the left, or what would be the west side, I think.
Hold on one second. Let me just switch over to a. Okay. So I believe the tree is. Can you still see this?
Yes.
Okay, I believe the tree is right in here somewhere.
Yes. I believe so too.
But yeah, that's going to be right within the layout, Mr.
Yeah.
Spalding. So there's no way to save it.
Okay. Have you run into this, Peter, before with there is some type of a species or animal or anything that you would have to relocate or take care of any type of liability in moving that tree? Or have you, in this specific case, like using a beekeeper to relocate those bees? I don't know. I really don't know anything about it, but it's something that I picked up on when we were out at the site and from the previous meeting.
To answer your question, Mr. Spalding, the only time I've ever had to do anything like that is when something was mapped out for rare and endangered species
Right.
through National Heritage. I've only had one other experience with trying to relocate trees, and that was in Linfield many years ago at a farm that had some historic sugar maples, and the client actually spent $100,000 relocating 3 trees, and all of them died.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think this tree is worth keeping. I think it's more of the bees that are living in it and nesting in it for what
Honestly,
sounds
no,
like years. Yeah.
no, I don't know anybody.
Right.
I know some. I do know a gentleman that's a friend of mine that he's he removes bees from your house. I don't know if he does this type of thing.
So it was put out there, it'd be nice if they could be removed. So is that just, it's not a condition of the board, but, we'd like to know either way, at least Mr. Howe would probably like to know, is your client just, is he gonna do anything or not? Just so we're all on the same page.
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no, but if it's in the right of way. I mean, if there's a neighbor or Mr. Howe himself that wants to have somebody come take a look at it to move the bees, I don't think anyone's going to stop them. But this certainly isn't part of our definitive plan filing now.
Well, that's in the right of way, which is that section is a private right of way.
Right.
Is that on Mr. Howe's property or is that on the town's property? It's on either the Mr. Howe's property or the town's property. So
I believe it's in the right of way, Mr. Chairman.
it's the right of way, but it's a private way. So
Yes.
So whoever, Peter, it's to the center line. So each property owner owns to the center line. Is it on the town's property or is it on across the street's property? Like, can you show where the beach is on this plan?
Hold on one second. Give me 1 minute.
I mean, I can call a beekeeper tomorrow. I know one, and I can see what it would be like when a tree is infested. That's a very difficult process because I think the hives become part of the tree, which I think Mr. Howe was saying. So, I mean, I can call a beekeeper and find out because it would be sinful to kill these bees if it's just not necessary. If we could relocate them and you knew where the queen was, that'd be wonderful. And I'll ask and I'll give you that information. I don't want to, do I want to say it's a condition because it could be a fortune to redo it? I don't, but I'm going to get you that information. So when we come back to you next month, I will tell you, or I'll even email it to the board. And then Megan, not Megan, I apologize. It can be distributed. That's absolutely something I'll do. Erin, I'll send it to Erin. That's what I mean.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
I don't know why I said Megan because Megan's name came up.
No, that's fine. No,
I apologize.
Yeah. Mr. Howe does have his hand raised. Go ahead.
Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, this is the prior plan, I believe, from 2013. So I believe that's the tree right there. It's just about right at the end of Mr. Howe's fence, but he sounds like he wants to speak.
Excuse me. I just know a little bit about it. I can tell you where it is, and I can tell you something that may be hearsay about in terms of relocating or moving them. It's on the street side of the stake. So when the road is extended or adjusted, it's not going to be. It's going to be in the roadway, as Mr. Lowry said. Whether you can quibble about whether I own the feet of the center, so that's my property or not. It's going to be the street. That tree will have to come down for the road to go through there. And it's a dead tree. When I've had some other extermination work done when I bought the house to get rid of some other pests, I asked an exterminating company about it. I said, what's the deal with this? And actually the owner of the company does some beekeeping apparently. He said it was a Massachusetts regulation that you cannot take an active honeybee hive and just destroy it. Certainly as an exterminating company, that is not something they can do. Just, throw it in the shredder of like along with the tree. They would be fined if they did that. Ideally, this is thousands of pollinators, because it's on the edge of a wooded area. It helps all our gardens. I know the folks on the other side of the street, do an extensive amount of gardening, and we do too. So, I brought it up a few meetings ago. We'd like to see something done. Well, we'd certainly like to see best practice in that they not be destroyed, and ideally something done that kept them in the neighborhood. But none of us are beekeepers. So I don't know what that is. But, while we're making this change, and I think it's almost a certainty that tree will come down, I would like to see that addressed in the least negative way. Again, the 100% positive would be, again, I don't think you can relocate them in the wild. And I don't know if somebody wants to set up one of those little boxes like the beekeepers have. I would have nothing against it, except I don't know anything about it. But again, these are an important aspect of nature. We're losing a lot of nature here. If this project goes through, we're losing a lot of trees and everything that goes along with that. So if this could be preserved or short of that, just treated as lawfully and respectfully as possible, I guess that's what I'd like to see.
Again, I'm going to come back to the board with information, and I'll do that at the next meeting. I'll make sure I talk to somebody and I determine the regulations, the applicability and the viability of actually transporting. Because for the most part, honeybees don't like to be moved. So I'll find out.
Yeah, if we can have a discussion with the beekeeper, and if they say it's not feasible or something, that's fine.
100%. This
Okay.
board needs the information regardless. So, and I'm definitely going to deliver that to you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. I think so.
Matt, sorry, can you go back to a plan, please, with the lot?
This plan?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the existing condition. I'm sorry, who was speaking?
This is Aaron. I just
Oh,
wanted
okay.
another look at the lot if you're going down the road on the left.
Mr. Kelly's lot?
Sure. Yeah.
The one on the north side of the new road?
This right here.
Yeah.
Yep, that's Mr. Kelly right there at number 59.
No, the proposed new lot.
Okay, over here, the new house?
Yep.
Okay, sure. Hold on a second, Aaron. Right there?
Yeah. Can you just zoom in for me?
Sure.
So I know this has been discussed before, but I do have serious concerns, and I know Concom, and I'm not a planning board member, this is just me just talking out loud, with how the proposed house goes right up to that wetland 25 buffer, and we're not going to take down trees, yeah, that's all. I just want to put out, because it's like right on the 25.
Well, I mean, you have to remember that the 25-foot buffer isn't really official in Wakefield. We're adding that as just a courtesy. So the 25-foot buffer is not going to be disturbed, and then everything outside that can be developed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I make some comments about this as well? Or are we in that part of the
Oh,
meeting?
before we move on to the next one, I mean, and I'm sorry.
No, I noticed that, and I know it just caught my eye tonight for some.
Okay, no, I want to get back before we get the trees. I don't think
Yeah,
I got a
and-
final answer. Are we gonna keep
Yeah.
the trees or get rid of the trees?
That's, yeah, I want to clear that up too. So
We're okay either way. Yes, trees, no trees.
I think Bill, actually Megan and Bill, did you guys have any comments on this or? You
I
think
did. I'm
we're-
in agreement with, I don't believe there should be any easements for trees.
All right,
And we need to find another solution.
Okay,
All right.
so if that's the case, I would recommend then just eliminating the trees because the trees can't go inside the right of way. So you could put the trees on the lots with no easements, but they can't go inside the right of way because they'll be in the drainage systems. So that's
correct.
really your alternative.
So we will not eliminate the trees, but the trees will be planted on the private property and they will be covered by a homeowner's agreement that they will be maintained and, okay.
Sure,
All
we'll
right,
just
good.
take away the easements, but we'll leave the tree locations if that's okay for.
Yep.
Right, and
that's
then
fine.
we'll burden them with, if they die, they need to replace, they need to establish, they get redone.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Sorry about that, Mr. Spalding and Aaron. Keep going.
No, I just wanted to make sure with Matt that we were finished up the tree part before we moved on to this lot on the north side. When we did the site walk, I had the chance to speak to a few of the neighbors that are on the Molly Lane side and right back up to here. Molly Circle, sorry. Is it Circle or Lane? Sorry.
Circle.
Yeah, okay, that's right. I'm having a hard time understanding how a house on that side is going to exist. And I do understand the road bends and you definitely with Thor and staked it out so we can really see where it is, but it drops off quickly. And that area, which was all wet during the last storm, which wasn't even a big storm. And I know this is hearsay from a neighbor. So that whole area was flooded. So I know this plan is going to improve the drainage from what it is now. No doubt about that. To what extent will this plan help with the drainage to reduce the amount of stormwater that will pick up behind that house and push it towards Molly Circle? I know that goes back uphill. But the neighbors that do run to the north and then to the northwest of this plan have mentioned a few times in this meeting as well, that there's some makeshift concrete with a upside down carriage from a supermarket holding everything together as a drainage pass there. Is there any way that this plan can include or somehow provide a clear path of drainage out through there, since of course this proposed subdivision is going to add more runoff. It just has to, with all the trees disappearing, with the new roofs going in. And I know the natural containers and everything, it's all gonna help. But after being up there and looking at the slope on the south side coming down, the creek on the southwest side, and then the amount of dip that happens behind this proposed house on the north side, I just can't understand how it's going to alleviate what's happening another 100 yards northwest of here that could completely fall apart and cause damage to neighbors. What can we do about that? What can be done about that?
So that culvert that you mentioned, Mr. Spalding, is
Mhm.
off-site.
Yeah,
And I took a walk over there and it's a 12-inch or maybe a 15-inch reinforced concrete pipe. I mean, it's probably been there for quite some time. I talked to Mr. What's his name now? I'm sorry. He lives right at the end of Molly Circle.
mm-hmm.
Big guy. He's actually bigger than me. But he had mentioned that, at one point, this was all, I think, part of the Galucci estate. And as you can see, there's old roads that kind of go everywhere. So I don't know who put that culvert crossing in. It has a wire cage, I think, on both sides. I didn't see a shopping cart, but I did see just
I didn't
like
go
some,
over. Yep.
I
Understood.
saw some,
Yep.
I saw some like metal grating. You know, and that's mostly just to kind of keep the leaves from clogging it up. But the only person that's actually allowed to go in and fix that would either be the property owner themselves, or the town of Wakefield DPW, if they have the rights to go in and maintain it. I would think that somewhere there might be some language that the DPW could go in, because obviously if that culvert ever got blocked and started backing everything upstream, someone's gonna call and they're gonna have to go find it out.
Understood. And just, I guess my point of bringing this up is I'm just not comfortable with how that house on the north side is going to sit. And obviously those trees are all going to come down so the house can go in, which is going to change how much rain is directly falling into this whole area and being absorbed.
So you can remove trees, Mr. Spalding, and
I-
still mitigate.
I understand.
The runoff.
Let me finish my thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
as this all funnels down to the northwest of this property,
Mhm.
do you know if that other culvert is on private property? And I understand it's out of your scope, but is it on private land or is it on town land?
1 second.
And I know it's out of your scope. I understand. I do remember seeing it in a plan.
I believe that is the property of, it could possibly be either the very back of Mr. Kelly's property, or it could possibly be on now or formerly Vincent Leahy, who lives at 1975 Nahant Street. It's a very long
Okay.
parcel, I believe. So see this
Yeah,
parcel
the
here?
plan. Yep.
This goes all the way out to Nahant Street.
Yeah.
So I believe it's either on this gentleman's property or this gentleman's property.
Right. But it's not town property.
I don't believe so, but
Yeah.
the town could have rights to it, to maintain it. I don't know.
Okay.
But to answer your other question, Mr. Spalding, and it's a fair one. So this house, like I said, the whole purpose of this plan was to try to work with the land. And so this is it's a walkout in the back. So the grade is higher in the front and then it's lower in the back. So you walk out of the cellar floor grade onto the back. So we're actually doing very little disturbing in the back of the house grade wise, whereas most of the grading is here and then on the sides and everything ties in. As far as the runoff in Molly Circle, you're absolutely correct. Molly Circle is up here, it's much higher. Their runoff discharges down to this existing swale through a pipe, and then everything runs through here. So the only way this runoff could ever affect anybody up on Molly Circle is if we were to pump it up to their backyard. This area behind does get somewhat lower. So I'm not saying that the water doesn't drain up. There's an existing drainage easement located back here. But I believe the intention was when Molly Circle went in that this was to flow this way and then ultimately end up out at Nahant Street.
Right. And I do understand it's not going to affect Molly Circle. I'm thinking of the houses that are north and northwest of, you can see the north arrow going that way. I'm
Mhm.
thinking as all this water flows into that, I think you mentioned 12-inch culvert. And I know it's out of scope, but do you feel that that's not properly sized where this new development and the added amount of runoff?
So our requirements, Mr. Spalding, when we do this drainage analysis and stormwater report from DEP, they require that we don't increase the post-development rates to the pre-development rates at the downstream point of comparison. So the downstream point of comparison for our property is essentially right here at this northern corner.
Understood.
So we don't typically have to analyze anything beyond that unless, there could be a special circumstance. But if we demonstrate, let's say in the existing condition, the amount of cubic feet per second that reaches that pipe is, let's say 10 cubic feet per second. And then after we do our development and we rerun the numbers, taking into account all the infiltration and the capture and that type of thing, and the number comes out to be 9.6 CFS, as long as it's a slight decrease, we've met the standard.
Okay. So this is my last comment about this.
Sure.
Is there any option or plan to just eliminate that house completely on the north side? Have Stark Ave go straight into a cul-de-sac and just have the two houses on the south slope and just do this right? I mean, right meaning make it work for the people around and make it work for Maybe it won't be a full cul-de-sac radius, but has that been an option where that house on the north side just doesn't exist, and it allows a full turn cul-de-sac and the two houses up on the hill, which we know are going to require blasting, which we know is going to require a lot of work. And I believe in this drainage system as well, but I just feel like 3 houses back here with this twist in the road with the different elevations is just not something I feel comfortable approving. I just want to put that out there right now.
So can you explain which house
The
are
house
you
on the north
asking?
side, there's only one house on the north. where the-
Okay, I never, okay, that one.
Sorry.
See, the problem with that is you are literally taking a lot from a legal homeowner. That, it isn't as if this whole area is owned by the same person. That's a separate property owner with separate property rights. So I legitimately cannot do that.
But, well. you
I'm
say
I'm
it's a
just telling you, I
separate- I'm sorry,
legitimately
you say it's a
cannot.
separate homeowner, a separate property owner.
Yeah.
Am I
Who has,
misunderstanding this, that right now there's one person who owns all 3 of these that's developing and then it's going to sell each one off to a separate person?
so what it is there are separate property owners that are selling to the developer that is actually the applicant. But each of those homeowners is expecting a certain economic advantage from their lot, which they're legally entitled to.
Which you can still
So-
divide by the number of property owners, and it's just one less house that's being developed back here.
Again, you can't, I mean, think
math-
about the
math
economic,
part's pretty easy.
I mean, think about the economics that you don't even come close to yielding the same economic value to a property owner. It just doesn't work. Dividing 2 by 3 is not the same economic expectation. And I would say we don't have the right because we can't allocate like that because there isn't enough money in the deal to take that benefit of that home and not pay that homeowner. No, I mean, literally, we cannot.
All right, well, if you can or cannot, that's up between you and your client. I feel I cannot approve this plan with that property on the north side.
I mean, and that's.
I don't feel
that's-
comfortable with it at all with the property on the north side. If you just had the properties on the south side with a nice turnaround radius in there that all the neighbors are looking at and we're listening to them, I would feel more comfortable.
And no matter, if we don't do that bend in the road, I believe, Peter, I don't know if I'm right or I'm wrong, we can't do low impact development, so we have to do the bend in the road. Is that right, Peter?
If we were gonna, well, if you went back to square one, which is just a roadway improvement plan to where it is and did not do low impact development, you'd have to go back to raising, kind of like what we had talked about, you'd have to raise everything up a few feet because now you have to put in catch basins and retaining walls and 4 bays and.
I'm sorry, there's already 6 and 7 foot retaining walls at the end of these driveways. I believe in your skills, Peter, that you could, and I'm not trying to patronize you, that you could figure out a low impact design, removing that house on the north and figuring out how that can work.
Well, Mr. Spalding, I respect your opinion. However, I'm a land surveyor and an engineer. And when somebody comes to us and they say, I'm looking to see what I could get permitted here, how many permittable lots could we get? And I say 3, but I'm only going to show 2. I'm not going to be in business very long. So your point is a good one. I understand what you're saying, but we have shown a viable plan. The house is actually greater than 25 feet away from all of the wetlands. There's access to a road, there's access to utilities, and it's a buffer zone project. We're not filling any wetlands. So
Are you
if we were
saying though, with your ability and your skill that you wouldn't be able to do a low impact development with the drainage without that house on the north, keeping just the 2 houses on the south?
Well,
and regardless of what your client is asking you to do, that's fine. I understand, the most economic, but I don't believe in the back of this area at the end of this longest dead end street in Wakefield, that 3 new houses going in versus 2 to allow a turnaround, to allow, I mean, are you saying that you wouldn't be able to design a low impact in this area?
I'm not sure because I haven't looked at it that way, but
Okay.
you have to remember when you do a subdivision. So if we did 2 lots instead of 3, right? The road costs the same amount. Normally you
That's what I mean.
you
Can't
take
do
this, you take the sales from one of the house and that's how you pay for the road. So
Right.
I don't understand if you take away one of the houses, I think you basically render this project financially, unfeasible.
And obviously, I can't say the cost and the benefit or the profit to the developer is in my best interest to speak and make decisions for the town when I hear the neighbors. I haven't heard one neighbor say anything good or be in favor of any part of this.
Okay, but that's not, okay, that's not unusual. The rationale.
Oh,
is
I'm
still
sorry,
they
let me
all-
interrupt you.
they-
It is unusual because we've had plans and developments of subdivisions that neighbors have been happy to see updates to the roads, updates to drainage. And when there have been situations that, in my experience, that have been neighbors that were happy with the subdivision plans.
And I understand, with all due respect, I've done hundreds of development projects, and I will tell you maybe 3 times somebody comes out in favor. If I'm improving a part of a road that's really poor and it's a bad road, that is the case that they will come out in favor. But in an instance where we're simply trying to develop the end of their street, they almost never come out in favor because I'm not doing anything necessarily for them. I'm simply giving the people who own the lots the same exact rights they have. So, I mean, just to boil it down like this is a subdivision roadway. The property does not work doing 2 lots below. If we have to, if we have to keep the bow in the road, there's absolutely no reason not to have the house on the opposite side. If you're saying, make the cul-de-sac a full cul-de-sac, but that it just, because the fire department says it's still accessible, you have anecdotal information from abutters that isn't accurate because there's no real impact to them. We're coming down the street, it's 3 homes on a development that's already heavily occupied. I mean, this is simply 3 more homes where people have the legal right to develop those lots. Do we have the legal right to put the bow in? I would say yes, and I would be willing to go to court on that one. But nonetheless, the subdivision plan is the subdivision plan, and we need to comply with stormwater. I have no doubt about that. We have to, but it needs to be with regard to the road construction and why that 3rd lot is of issue. If the road bows, there's plenty of room for that home. There is. I don't understand what you think we'll gain by eliminating that home, if other than putting in a full cul-de-sac, which we can still, I guess, look at putting in a full cul-de-sac. But when the fire department says you don't need it, I don't understand why. There's no legal justification or why. If the fire
all right,
department says it's okay.
First of all, the fire department didn't say, they said they are able to turn a fire truck around there. They're not saying that it's that they approve of this.
Oh, I thought they did, Peter. No?
They're basically saying that there is the ability to turn a fire truck around on there. They're not saying that they approve of this design. At least that's what I take from it. And I've talked to the deputy chief also, and he's not really in favor of this. He did point out that in 2017, there was a 2-alarm fire on Stark Ave, and it was basically a nightmare to get trucks up there because of how wide it is. And they had to back them all down the street. They couldn't turn them around. So I do not want to represent that the fire department is fine with this. So they basically said that they could turn a truck around. So.
I mean, and by the way, here, they wouldn't have to back them up because they can turn. My guess is it was done at the other end. I don't know where those fires were, but again, relative to this, it's far better than, my understanding is it's better than the cul-de-sac that exists. So it's an improved condition. Again, it's completely within this board's ability to say yay or nay. I mean, legally, the subdivision approval has to be to the extent practicable because it's already in existing lots and people have a reasonable expectation for development of their properties. That's the law. With regard to, creating low impact development, we have to comply with the regulations, and to do so means straightening out the lot and putting in hard structures and doing that. If that's the alternative, we can do it. It's not as good for the environment. It's not as good for the people, but we can do it.
All right. And one other thing I keep hearing, you guys, you're using low impact development techniques. this is not a low impact development. So I know it keeps saying it's a low impact development. You're blasting out there, you're excavating a lot of material. You're basically clear cutting the entire right of way and filling up the entire right of way with either drainage structures or a roadway. That is not a low impact. So I know you keep saying it's a low impact development. I will argue with you if you want to go look up the definition of a low impact development. It's working with the land and trying to get it to fit in. This is completely filling the entire right of way with drainage structures or roadway. So
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's better to say it's a more low impact development than the traditional structures that would be required in it if you were to put hard structures instead of swales. I don't disagree with you, Mr. Lowry, at all. I don't.
okay.
I do not. The nomenclature be not. I agree with what you said.
All right. I have a couple things to go over. I don't know if Megan or anyone else has anything they want to say first. Just I hate to take up too much time, but
No, I will yield to you, Mr. Lowry.
okay. One thing I heard on our site walk that I hadn't heard as of yet, and I did check it out with a couple people. Apparently the trash truck has to back up the roadway many times in order to service this street. Have you heard anything about that?
Peter, the trash man backs up. I don't know.
I don't remember anybody saying that to me at the site visit, Mr. Lowry, no.
All right. So I checked it out with a few people and they said, yes, oftentimes the trash truck will back up basically 1,400 feet in order to service this street. So what that tells me is that the turnaround that's out there is inadequate. And I think, we've heard that from a lot of people that it doesn't work. You've also said you're making it a great improvement. Again, it's marginally better, if anything, than what's out there, and you're moving it 450 feet further down the roadway. So I just, every time I hear that, I'm just, I kind of shake my head. I don't see that this is a great improvement. And one of the things that I've said from the start is you need to make the situation out here better. Again, this is just moving what we have further down the road. So that's going to play into a lot as to whether I'm going to approve this also. Apparently, if we can't make it any bigger, and it really hasn't grown any since the first original design that was submitted to us. So apparently this is the only size it's going to fit out there. So that's one issue. The other issue I have, and as I'm reading through the preliminary report from the DPW, and I see all the issues with the drainage infiltration trenches that you have, especially on the first 100 feet of roadway, which I'll remind you isn't controlled by you. It's basically in front of other people's homes. So being able to manage that and make sure that it's properly maintained is going to be difficult. And you haven't proven to me how you can do that. If the developer owned all of the land, that would be one thing. He can write something into homeowners associations and get it controlled pretty well. But we already have the situation where if one of the abutters wants to put a driveway in there, apparently he can just pave over it. So my question is there any way for you to get this project to work without the first 100 feet that's not owned by you, if that was taken out of the equation?
Well, you can't get to the property without that first 100 feet.
No, what I'm saying is doing your drainage calculations,
Mhm.
if say the first 100 feet, if the people on the north side decided I'm sorry, I'm getting my,
You're right.
yeah,
On the
the north
side, of
side,
Mr. Kelly.
decide they want to just pave in front of their entire lot.
Yeah.
And park cars there. Is your drainage system still going to work with all that being paved or not?
So if they paved all the way to their lot line,
Yeah.
It would be more runoff. Do I think it would still work? I think it would probably still work, but I don't know. I've never run that situation.
Well, see, and as I'm looking at your examples that you gave for other low impact development, all of the property that you have developed and constructed has been controlled by one entity.
Mhm.
So therefore you can design the entire system. In this case, you can only design basically you only have control of 2/3 of the roadway. The other third is basically owned by 3 different entities, one of them being the town and then 2 private owners.
So, Mr. Chairman, you're making a great point, but I need to bring you back to how we started this, why we're here. Wakefield does not have a roadway improvement mechanism. If you did, this would be a lot easier. You have to improve a roadway to get to your property. We don't have that here. So the DPW asked us to file a subdivision plan in lieu of that. So just because you're going across other people's property in front of it doesn't mean you can't build a roadway.
No,
No,
but you need to be able to have a design that works with what you have.
so Peter, yeah, the question is, Mr. Lowry's trying to get to the point of, look, if a swale, which is on the side of a roadway,
Mhm.
which is accessible by a lot owner, can be manipulated. He's asking you, can you do away with the swale and your storms still work? Because when you do your drainage calcs, you need to make the assumption that that person, I'm hoping saying the right things, Mr. Lowry, is going to pave the entire swale. You have to assume that. Can you make your drainage still work, assuming that?
I think that's a pretty unfair question, frankly. I mean, what if everybody down Stark Ave decided to pave everything? And then all of a sudden the catch basin's surcharged? How would you answer that question?
I mean, I have to tell you, if all the swales are in the right of way, there is a limitation to what a person can in fact do, because it's the right of way. So when you have some sort of an access point, people have to be reasonable.
So, I mean, if we're talking like that, somebody could go down and pour concrete into a catch basin.
Wow, that's an illegal act. Okay, so we'll talk about this offline.
listen,
And-
But I think is that,
And the
was
rest,
that what your
and the
point
rest
is,
of
Mr.
Stark
Lowry?
Ave is an accepted right of way, so the
Right.
town can go in there. If someone did do that, the town can legally go in there
Right,
and correct the situation. Unfortunately, this is a private way. The town
Okay.
can't go in there and do that. So that's where I'm getting at.
so you want to
There's
know
a-
that if somebody, in this case, it would either be Mr. Kelly or somebody decided to have an asphalt company come in and pave everything out in the right of way, I think most likely they would immediately be contacted by the Wakefield Conservation Commission and say, all of your activity is illegal because it's within a 100-foot buffer zone to the wetlands. So listen, I don't mind answering reasonable questions, but this is not reasonable. So no.
I think it's completely reasonable because
Okay.
we have to approve,
Okay.
we're deciding whether this is going to work in the
To
future.
answer your question, Mr. Lowry, if somebody paved that, I would say within a couple of days, the town would come in and make them remove it. And then we'd go back to the workable design.
Okay, that's fine. That's the answer. That's an answer. Okay. So, all right. Let's see. I think that's it for my questions. If no other board members have anything, I'm going to open it up to the public. So if anyone from the public would like to comment, please raise your hand and identify yourself. All right. I don't see anyone right now, so we're left with,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
While we have Mr. Howe here, one thing I do want to bring up. Mr. Howe, through you, Mr. Chairman, you would still like to have that catch basin remain in front of your property? Or do you want it removed?
No, I don't want any catch basins removed.
Okay, so the last
I mean,
round of
if
comments,
it-
again, through you, Mr. Chairman, I got, the DPW is asking that we remove that catch basin and then make the catch basin in front of Mr. Howe's property a double grade catch basin. So they would like that to be removed.
the existing
I'm sorry.
catch basin
ahead.
in the pavement that's on his property, basically.
Yes,
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to talk to the DPW about that, but while Mr. Howe's here, I just would like to know his feelings on the matter.
To be clear that we're
Feelings are-
talking about the correct catch basin, would it be better if you shared a plan?
Am I still sharing? Oh, no, sorry.
You can now.
Okay, sorry about that, Mr. Spaulding.
That's okay. I think it would, just for clarity.
Sure, hold on a second. Okay, everybody back? Can we see that?
Yeah, is
Okay.
it possible to pull up maybe the PDF? It's a little easier, I think, for people to see than,
Sure, hold on one second.
or go to a white background, maybe.
Sure, hold on a second. I'll try to, sorry about that. Try this one. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the catch basin right here. This is in front of Mr. Howe's house. We had talked about leaving it just so that he does get runoff that comes from up behind him that heads to this catch basin. It does take runoff from the street as well. I think when we had talked about this in an earlier meeting, he would like to leave it. Again, the DPW would like us, I think, to just remove this catch basin and make this a double. But I don't want to just do that without having any input back from Mr. Howe before I go talk to Tim and Bill.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
My feeling about it is, I'm not an engineer. It works now. If ideally, I think, and again, I have no idea if this is likely or possible, to just move it straight out to the street. That seems to me it would catch runoff from the road and sort of do the job it's doing now. I mean, I think Mr. Blaisdell and people who, you can see the road, and I've been told there'll be some regrading and sloping and whatnot. It's kind of an odd predicament in that, the road has a fairly high crown in the middle and then slopes toward the end of where my driveway is now, but my driveway is not all that steep. So again, I'm not an engineer. At the end of the day, I don't want water flowing toward my house.
So
That's the only thing. And I don't think, so asking me where I want it is, I want it to work. And I want it to work sort of along the lines as Mr. Lowry was saying, as well as it's working now or better. I don't under any circumstances want it working less well than it's working now.
right. So when Mr. Lowry had asked us to do some additional grading, we did. So essentially, Mr. Howe, the grade right at your house. So when you're facing your house and you're walking up the right side of your driveway, the elevation at the bottom of your step at the right front corner of your house is essentially elevation 112.9. The elevation of the catch basin is essentially a 111.8. So it's a 1.5% slope from your house right to that catch basin. So
The one in question or the other one?
so this one right here, the existing one.
Peter?
So we
Peter?
could regrade it again, as Mr. Lowry had asked, can you please give us some additional detail there? We could grade from your house right to the catch basin. If we added another grade here, it would take additional flow. Just moving this up to the street here really wouldn't do much. So if we added the double grate here and eliminated this and made sure everything sloped to that catch basin, I think it would work just fine. And then you had talked a little bit about, you know, maybe doing some lawn off the side of your pavement. And I know you've got a couple of vehicles there that maybe you could put crushed stone there or whatever you want to do. But I think if we can, with the additional grades that we got after Mr. Lowry had asked us to look into that, I think it'll work just fine. I just didn't want to, you know, do it without talking to you or at least hearing what you have to say.
Like I say, you know, aesthetically, you know, no, I don't need a catch basin on my property if that becomes lawn. But again, I'm not an engineer. I want the water from wherever it flows to go down the drain and not toward my house, pool up on my property, or whatever it might do. So I know that drain where it is now takes a lot of water. It takes water that comes down Stark Ave. It takes water when neighbors drain their pool covers and it runs down the road. That's where it goes. You know, rainy days, whatever. And some, you know, coming down the slope of my side yard on a particularly rainy day. But that's, you know, it's pretty woodsy there. That absorbs a lot, but water comes down there. You know, it's mostly the paved surfaces is where you really see the water running. And, you know, like I say, I just, at the end of the day, nobody wants water. You want water going down the drain.
We have enough information. We have enough information now, Mr. Howe, to show that, that your house in the driveway is higher than that catch basin, and that when that's removed and if graded properly, it'll keep the water running away from your house.
All right, because
And I just wanted to just point that out to you, just to let you know that we were being responsive in that from our conversation in the field and from our last hearing.
But what would happen to that? Would it, would a manhole cover go there? Would it be capped over and
Typically
soil put over it?
Just be removed. I can talk to DPW to see. So I think what we're trying to avoid too is I don't think they want to have that drain line on your property. Mr. Lowry had mentioned it in the past. You know, what does that do then as far as, you know, does now the town have to obtain a drainage easement from you? And, you know, I'm not really sure that that's what they want to do. But I'll have that conversation with Mr. Ronell and see what he wants to do.
Well, again, should all this go forward, the town would at some point need to abandon the easements they have and do that of record.
So I'm sure someplace there might be some language that goes along with that plan number 80 of 1958. And then I'm not sure if it has to be officially abandoned or if it's just becomes abandoned because it was generally called a temporary turnaround. So I'm not really sure on that.
yeah, this is kind of an odd situation because it was just a temporary turnaround. The town actually never had an easement for it. So,
Right.
and actually, I think I looked up your assessment. You're still getting assessed for the full amount of your lot. Yet you're not getting all the benefits of it because there's a turnaround on it. So, and that's why I'm sure the town doesn't want to have to start dealing with that, leaving an easement or creating a new easement and having to maintain it. So it would be
But
best
the
just to remove.
temporary easement has no expiration date. So, I mean, I think ideally, if it's going to go away, the town should memorialize that by abandoning it, so that it doesn't come back. I mean, I guess the town, if the
For
town
there to
wants
be
to
an
retake
effective
it,
easement, there's got to be a written document, and Mr. Lowry seems to be saying there isn't one, so there is no
there
easement.
is, there is.
There is, so I don't know what it says, but
There's an easement for a temporary turnaround with no, but it doesn't define temporary. It could be 100 years.
yeah,
Well,
And it's been, it's been 70, so.
Well, this is why we're having this whole conversation, because if the road's gonna get extended, then there's no reason to have that temporary turnaround, therefore it would have to be removed. So this is why we're spending a lot of time talking about this turnaround that has first meant to disappear, then it reappeared, now it's disappearing again. So, but that's why we're spending time making sure it's gonna be done right. So.
Right, I would just point out that is not really something the developer can do. The easement would stay there while they do their work. But it would be a sort of a follow-up matter that the town, I think, would abandon the easement of record.
I have no, I don't know what your title says, so I can't speak to it. But if there's a legitimate written easement without termination, you would have to address it, yeah.
I
And it
mean,
would
the
have to
only-
be done by the town.
The only other example I can think of, Jill, and also Mr. Lowry, is, for instance, when you do like a 20-foot wide temporary,
I
construction easement.
specify when they go away. I specify
Yeah.
that when the town takes the land by, the public way, it goes away. I never leave them hanging like that. I've never seen a temporary easement hang. So I don't know the answer.
yeah, okay. Well, maybe something I'm sure we could figure out.
All right. I saw that the user Ivy's iPad had your hand up. Did you still want to ask a question?
Sure. I did want to first confirm I'm Ivy
I'm sorry,
Bork. I
could you
live on-
identify yourself with where you
Yes,
live?
I'm Ivy Bork. I'm Ivy Bork and I live at 10 Molly Circle. And so I'm on the circle up there. And I was at the site visit, so I do appreciate that and everybody's input. It was great to see that. I do want to confirm what you had mentioned earlier about the DPU, the sanitation truck. I go down that block. I've walked somebody's dog. So I have gone down that block, and on Wednesday, that truck is going backwards the whole street. I don't know how they do it. I get totally amazed, but they drive backwards and the whole way so that they don't have to turn around. So that was just to confirm, Chairman Lowry, what you had said. The one question I guess I had, if this gets approved, and as you said, there's a lot of ledge there because I'm up on Molly Circle, I'm up on ledge. Is there any, if this gets approved, there'll be a lot of blasting. Is there any discussion about peripheral damage to any homes? How extensive that might be or what impact it might have on Stark Avenue or on Molly Circle? I am concerned about the runoff. I'm concerned about the water. And now I'm concerned about what kind of damage it can do to my home and my foundation. So
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
any input on that would be appreciated.
Sure,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Bork, typically, if there's blasting before that happens, they do what's called a pre-blast survey. It's run. I can't remember if it's run out of the state fire marshal's office or if it's a third-party contractor. But essentially, they go and they inspect all of the homes within 300 feet of the blasting. And essentially you let somebody in your house, I believe they take pictures, videotapes, that type of thing, and just walk around just to see what type of condition your home is in before. And then, if there's any later on, if there's any damage or whatever, then they go back and they compare it to the previous existing. If you don't let the people in your house, you don't have to. It means that later on you may not have any, legal recourse. Not all the ledge, typically has to be blasted. I mean, some of it hopefully can be removed mechanically, but there would be the survey beforehand.
So that it's a very good question, and everybody's always concerned that I don't blame anyone for being concerned about blasting. But truly, it is a very controlled activity. I think anybody who's an engineer or a developer on this site knows that the way blasting works now is not unlike the old days. It's done in a very controlled environment, and they locate seismic readers on like the boundaries to make sure that your property doesn't get damaged, and they have to report that to the fire department. So every time there's an event, which is a blast, they actually send out a tone. So they let you know what it's going to sound like, and you'll be more than aware of what's going to happen. And then once that happens, they read these seismographs to make sure that that blast charge that they're using is appropriate. So it's controlled at every step. It's called controlled blasting. And they do it so that there's not a lot of vibration, and they understand, they test the soil, they test the type of rock it is, and then they understand what they need to do for a charge in order not to have the vibration reach your home. And then as a stopgap, they have that insurance protection, and then they come out and they survey your property. So it's very controlled. It's done with safety in mind, and the town issues a permit for that through its fire department. And the regulations are volumes. I mean, it's the Massachusetts regulations controls blasting. So again, I know you're concerned, again, I would be as well, but it is very controlled, and the fire department does oversee every aspect of it.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course.
So that's, I mean, we haven't even got into that one issue as to volume of material. Have you done any, obviously, since you're using low impact techniques down below on the street, basically everything excavated from the site's going to have to be removed, correct?
Are we going to remove any unsuitable material? Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying anything that's dug up there, you're not filling in really much at all out here. You're basically, they're all cuts out here. You're not having many fills, correct?
1 second. Yeah, there's only a little bit of fill, Mr. Chairman, which is essentially at the low point. Everything else is, yeah, pretty much a cut.
All right. Have you worked out volumes yet for how many truckloads maybe having to be removed from here?
No, we have not.
Okay. Will you be doing that?
I have not been requested to do that by the DPW. And we could certainly come up with some rough numbers if desired.
I always like to know how many trucks may be going up and down the street. So yeah, that would be good to know. Do you know how much blasting there's going to be? Have you done any samples for that yet? No, we don't know exactly how much ledge is going to have to be removed. All right. And do you know how many houses are within 200 or 300 feet of this site?
Great question.
Of the blasting.
Hold on 1 second. Please hold. Approximately 11.
11 houses are within
Yeah, about 11 houses.
within 300 feet of the blast, of where they'll be blasting?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just offsetting there's not going to be any blasting on the north side. There would only be any blast on the south side. So I just offset the property boundary across the street. There's not going to be blasting in the road. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So some of the 300-foot radius, Mr. Chairman, actually falls just in some people's yards, not through their homes. I don't know if the circle cuts through their yard, if they still do the house, they probably would, but conservatively
It's to structure.
to structure, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All right. All right. And just for the record, I lived through about a year of blasting for Gates of Greenwood, so I'm fully aware of how that whole process works.
Where was that?
Excuse me,
Where was that, Mr. Chairman?
down in Greenwood.
In Greenwood?
Gates of Greenwood, they blasted there for a long time. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you do paint a rosy picture of the blasting process, which is nice. So,
It's, yeah,
reality
I know what you mean.
is a little bit less. So,
I hear you.
all right. I don't, if there's no other comments from the public and no other comments from the board at this point, by our next meeting, which is going to be May 10th, I think, yeah, May 10th. Will you be ready with everything?
Yeah, so we have our Concom meeting on Thursday, so hopefully we can hear some concerns there and iron those out. And then I think a lot of the concerns that Bill and Tim have are, that are just looked at just sitting down so we can go over everything. So I don't think there'll be any problem with having everything into you before May 10th.
My concern is that this gets reviewed and we get the new plans a day or two before our next meeting. And we're getting into this cycle where we're really not getting anywhere, it seems like, because we're waiting on the next steps. So when do you expect that you'll have the comments from the DPW and the plans will be revised and we will receive them so we can review them?
So my goal would be to have them back, a week before the hearing. And I'm hoping to have some time with either Bill or Tim sometime this week or early next week.
Okay.
So it just didn't work out yesterday.
All right. And there's going to be details added for what we talked about previously.
Yep, we're going to have additional details for retaining wall types. There was a couple of the details that I think Tim wanted us to add and Bill wanted us to add, and if there's anything else, obviously adding the detail of the grading around Mr. Howe's property that you asked us to take a look at. There's coordinates that we have to add, the property line for the state plan coordinate system. And I can't think of any other details that I think you've asked for that we haven't provided yet, but certainly remind me if there's something that you think we forgot.
I don't think so. I would expect that, and I was truthfully hoping to do it at this meeting, was to get eyes on the final plans so then we could basically go through the waivers and see how the board feels about granting them. So
Yeah, I'd like to. This most of the waivers I think that we've requested, a majority of them the DPW is okay with. There's still a handful left that I think we just have to iron out with them. So my hope is that at the next go round, you're going to have a letter back with all their concerns and the comment's going to say comment addressed.
okay. Again, it's this board that grants the waivers, not the DPW. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, I agree. And
Yeah.
I know that you listen to them, but you're the one that's vote.
Yeah, we've been, and unfortunately, the way this has been a really extended process. And I almost feel like I owe everyone an apology, because when this project was first submitted, all the documents weren't provided, and which is not uncommon, but usually we get them pretty quickly so that engineering can start commenting on it and we can move this process along. Unfortunately, the stormwater report didn't come until basically 125 days into your 135-day statutory process that we're supposed to act on it. So this had to be extended, twice. So I really had wished, and looking back on it, and what we're doing also now is we're revising our rules and regulations for subdivisions. I'm going to put in there that any project that especially has to go before conservation is going to get filed simultaneously, so we don't deal with this again. This is stretched out almost half a year now, and it's just it doesn't feel like we're getting any traction anywhere. So, but again, I feel like I need to apologize to the DPW because it's stretched. They're spending a lot more time because all the documents weren't provided when they should have been, and that's partly my fault for not insisting upon it. So, but we'll move on from here. And I fully expect at our next meeting that we have seen eyes on the final plans and have hopefully the comments from the DPW that we can vote on at least the waivers, and then depending on how those goes, if there's something you need to do to improve it, to hopefully, appease the board to maybe change one of those waivers, we'll see. But so, all right, so I'm going to continue this meeting and the public portion of it to May 10th, 2022, and we'll do it at 7:05 again. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time
night.
this evening. Good night.
All right.
Mr. Howe did have his hand up, but maybe we've just missed it.
Still here, if I could just make a
Well,
comment.
unfortunately, the applicant
Yeah, I know.
is not on here, so it
I
would
think I
not,
missed my chance. That's
yeah,
all.
it would not be fair for you to comment and them not
I got
hear you. So
I got it.
okay, so unfortunately, we'll have to wait till our next meeting. So, all right. Moving on to item number 4, discussion of procedures for changing street names. Did you guys get that email I sent earlier today about, I took the form and I started editing it. So let me, I'm gonna pull that up so we can take a look at it. And this is, again, something I really think we need to get moving on it so we can have something ready for a recommendation for a bylaw change. So let me pull that up.
Matt, I have it open if you want me to pull it up.
Sure, if you want to pull it up, that's fine. All right. So I took a form, I don't remember where it came from now, and I basically went through to, and I know this is only one step of the whole process. This is just the form that someone would need to fill out in order to, if they wanted to go through this procedure. We still need to have all the written procedure filled out also, but we got to start somewhere. So this is what I put together. you know, Bill, let me pull that up so I can scroll through it.
I stopped sharing. You should be able to share. I did get a chance to look through it quickly before our meeting, but not with a close eye.
All right. Yeah, again, I should have got to this a lot sooner. It's one of those best intentions. So I went through this. Again, I copied a different form and just tried to, this is obviously not how the final form's gonna be. Someone at town's gonna have to format this properly, but I just thought I'd throw down what I could think of to start, and then we can go through and see how we want to edit this, if we want to edit this, or what the next steps are. So again, I envision this as the first step. This would either be probably online or somewhere. They would get this form and say, hey, I want to change the name of my street. This would be the first step. So they would take this and fill in what their street is, what the current street, what their proposed street name would be. And then as I was thinking of it, I put these check marks in for if it's the entire street that's going to be changed or a portion of a street. And I know people are like, why would you do a portion of a street? But we have streets like Spring Street down in Greenwood, which is split by the railroad tracks. So there's a Spring Street on each side of the railroad tracks, which you know, that could be a candidate for part of that being changed. So I wanted to put this option in there. So so if it was going to be a portion of a street, you'd put the address range, or from the intersection, something that would divide it up. There's some other streets in town that are split by the railroad tracks on each side. Sometimes you don't realize this unless you're trying to find them, and you got to drive around to get to where you want to be. And there's another street, I think it's Elm Court, that is basically a horseshoe. So potentially some street like that. So I wanted to put that option in there. So you've got, this would be the first information you'd go through here. And then as you move down, there's the process for in the first check mark, I say to bring it to the fire chief in order to clear it for the street name. We had the conversation before why I tend to go to the fire department, because they know the existing streets and what proposed streets are. They usually have a good pulse on if there's confusing names out there. So they would be the first person to go to, and the person who would say yes or no. Just because the fire chief approves it doesn't mean it's obviously going to go through. So as I set this up, is that we would get this and it would be filed with the town clerk's office. Again, we're going to have to talk to the town clerk and make sure that this is appropriate. But as we're putting it together, I had to start somewhere. So, and then there's the application fee. And the application fee is basically just to put this through so the town departments can review it. This does not include the final street naming, signs, things like that. I don't know if that's something, how we would figure out a fee for that, if that's something that the DPW would do or how. So again, there's a lot of little nuanced things in here that really need to be looked at. So you'd have this form, and then this kind of is the process for how to go through it. I don't know, did we decide, did we want 75% of a street, 2/3? Were there any?
Can I just chime in?
Sure.
Yeah, I have been having a lot of thoughts about this, because anyone can go name a street. I definitely think 75% is great, or either higher, just to make sure, because I don't want anyone to come in and just feel like they can rename a road without the approval of a majority of that. So I'd definitely say 75 to 80%. But
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be not a huge burden, but it's going to be a burden for anyone living on that street if they have to start changing, notifying all their
yeah,
accounts.
it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Matt, I had a comment to Erin's point as well. If there's less than a certain number of people on that street, I would actually go for 100%. Meaning if there's less than 4 properties on that street, I would like to see 100%, not just 75. It could make a difference depending on how many properties are on that street.
So how do we write that down?
Well, 75% of property owners on street, unless less than 4 property owners are on the street, and that would be 100%. I think we could get the wording to work.
Okay.
Matt, I would advocate to add that to your sign-in sheet down below.
Where it
as
has
a
the
command.
line items.
Yeah,
um,
well, to
signature.
have like a required signature.
Yeah.
So this is I think where the mechanism of the how many signatures are required. I think the other thing I would comment is that I think it's warranted to have a list of certified town members living on the street, from the town registrar or whatnot, or similar to the abutters list, in order to validate that they're not saying, oh, there's 100 people who live on the street when there might be 125 or 150, just to make sure that we have that record.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. If someone's starting this process, even to get the form and start filling out, you'd have to get a certified abutters list. You think that should be a requirement? Or because if there's 4 people on the street and you need to go get a certified abutters list, it's one of those, again, there's a lot of nuanced things depending on what street you're doing and the size of it. So
in my opinion, I agree with Bill. I think, and it's consistent with what a number of the municipalities had, that there's a cutoff in terms of, a set of rules for a smaller size street. In my mind, and I'm open to being corrected by other members of the board or have opened that debate, but I think, 10 parcels or less is a material difference. And I think that if you said 10 parcels or less and you had 100%, otherwise, if you start getting to a larger street than that, I think having a certified abutters list, I personally view this as, if you're changing a street name, that this should not be undertaken lightly. And I think that if there is a decent amount of legwork that would be incumbent upon any proponent in order to do so. The other item that I think would make a lot of sense is on this cover sheet that we're looking at, I would advocate to add a checkbox, a signature box for the fire chief, to have it as, something in writing from them on the cover sheet, certifying that they've approved it and that mechanism is documented as such. Those are my initial responses looking at this. I definitely want to thank Matt for taking a first stab at it. I think it's definitely worthwhile, and it looks pretty close to what I think we could be functional, assuming that we get some of the formatting tightened up.
yeah, I have to tell you, as I was going through this, you start thinking of all the different scenarios, and it's like, how do I properly write that down, and what's the correct step? So I don't think we're going to get into a situation where someone's going to try to rename Main Street, but you want to make sure that it's not easily done. So it's a common occurrence.
Yeah, and Matt, I feel that it's, I don't want to, if somebody really wants to change the name of their street, my main goal would to make sure that everybody on the street understands the implications of an address change and what that could mean to their, from their license to everything. So to their passport and everything in between. So, yeah, I think it's very important that I mean, I don't know, 75%, maybe it's 100% no matter what. And that's what somebody has to do. That way we are clear as a board that each person, each property owner of that street understands that they have a copy of the possible name change updates, requirements that will need to be done after the street name change is changed. I don't know.
Yeah, and then that's why I was trying to think, if should all that go at the top of the signature sheet, that people are signing, they're basically acknowledging the fact that you're agreeing to undertake changing, you know, your car registration.
Yeah, to
your
Jim's point, I do like
everything,
it on
so.
top of the same street because, you know, hey, let's have a cookout over my house on a Sunday. Lots of free beverages. Here's a clipboard. Please sign this.
Yeah. And the page before that.
I know
outlined
I'm
what you're
making a
doing.
hypothetical scenario, but if it's right there at the top where they're signing, I think it's very important. Even in this, it's like, it needs to be page, 3 of 4, please, please, or whatever, please read, please make sure, like when you go to donate blood, have you read all the other stuff, other pages before you sign?
So yeah, that's what I was thinking. How do we put this all in one, the pertinent information that you're signing, you agree to do A, B, and C.
Right, there's almost like next to their printed name, signature, address, there's a checkbox that they have to check to acknowledge that they read the previous 3 pages, understanding their responsibility to update. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you get an iPhone and you'd say, check here that you've read 65 pages of double lot print and you agreed to giving up everything in your life, something like that. Is that what you're looking for? Which
No, I don't need the end user license agreement. I just would love some type of checkbox at the end or the beginning with a note saying that you have read the responsibilities of updating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like almost like a warranty, right? Like, right, that you agree with what you have to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're maybe you have a whole bunch of bullet points that everything's impacted on this form, and yeah, if you need multiple copies of this page, then you're making multiple copies of this page, so no one would ever not be signing this without having seen all the requirements.
Yeah, I think you have that at the end, Matt. There's like a little place for like page 1 of whatever.
Yeah, but it doesn't, you kind of need to have that on almost each page. So
Right.
just because you're signing sheet 8 of 20 doesn't mean you've looked at sheets 1, 2, and 3 that have the pertinent information. So putting all that information on top of each signature page is is an issue. So
one thing I didn't see throughout all the sites and information that was researched, it seems like either right before or right after the fire chief review, it's like you need to meet with either the town clerk or Erin or the planning board chair or vice chair to talk through it, like a 15-minute appointment to just walk through this form to understand why, not just what has to be completed, but yeah, you can download the form from the website, but the reasons behind it. And I think we want to show that as a town, we want to be able to assist that person who wants a name change and make sure they are going to the right places. I wonder if it's just, more of a note on the website for street name. Yes, we have the forms. Here's a sample form with like big red sample across it. But please schedule an appointment with the town official for a 15-minute walkthrough of the forms.
Well, then you get into which lucky town official is going to have more meetings with people about street change.
I mean,
Street
how
name changes. So
what is there, one
Erin,
every
you okay
5
with that,
years?
or?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see it being a big thing, but I would like some sort of protocol and how we dictate, which we've all been talking through. If it does make sense, doesn't make sense.
Honestly, it sounds like a town clerk type thing. Go up to the town clerk, talk to Betsy about a 15-minute appointment.
I mean, I'm not against having a form, but I think it just goes back to the language. Yeah, like what we were talking about. This is how it can work. Will not work.
Well, the way we could set it up also is we've got the bylaw, and it says, the form is available at the town clerk's office.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to the town clerk's office and say, I want that form, that's when you have a heart-to-heart and say, do you really want to do this? This is what is going to involve.
Yeah.
And then we need to be able to tell the town clerk what to say. So, just because they're going to meet with a certain person, then what is that person going to tell them? They need to be educated on the whole process. So we'll need to have materials for that person to be able to tell that potential street changing, name changing person the details.
I think it could be a new position on the planning board. It's like, chair, vice chair,
No.
street
No.
changer, street name changer.
I think Theo had his hand up.
Yeah, I am. Why isn't this like, if you're asking the fire department to sign off, just as sort of a prelim review, I think you would want the town clerk, and I think Erin, you would want you to do it. Like your position would be
Also engineering, like there's a whole list of people that need to sign off on that. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But isn't that, well, all right, so maybe that's fair. Because our review process would be getting everybody else to sign off on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily. It's, so I would envision this, you get this form, you send it back to the town clerk, they send it to us. Then you get the public hearing process where a notice is sent out to each of the board, to all affected departments. It would be potentially in the paper and publicized as a public hearing. And then at the public hearing, we would hear from whomever, the building department, the DPW, no, we don't like that for whatever reason. And then ultimately, if the planning board is one who's going to recommend this, and we still need to get to that, work on that stage, is it something that we recommend and approve, and then it goes to the town clerk for an official proclamation, or how, that's still in a discussion further down the pipeline here. So I'm trying to just work on the first thing, which is the application, and then we need to go through, how does this application, how does this bill become a law? Like
No,
the
I
after
agree.
school
I think that's-
special, we follow it along, so.
I think that's a good process. I mean, people should also have the opportunity to speak out if they don't like it or whatnot.
Yeah, and that's what the public hearing process would,
Yeah.
So again, I think we're looking at the planning board to be the public hearing authority on this. We would take testimony, hearing from other people, and then we would decide whether this is in the town's benefit or not. So then does that make it official there? Or is it we give a recommendation and it goes to town council for their final signature? I'm not sure about that.
We should probably talk to Tom Mullen about that, maybe? No?
Yeah, and I'd still like to find the old procedure that was at some point, part of our bylaws, what the procedure was back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I think Tom looked, he really can't seem to find anything. I don't know if it's going through the library and literally digging through old code to see if you can find it.
Okay. I mean, I think the process that you laid out sounds good. But yeah, how do we finalize it? I guess is the big question, right?
Yeah, so how do you guys feel about this board has final approval, or are we making a formal recommendation to someone else? What do you guys feel about that?
I feel a board needs to, and I think our board is the correct board to do this. Meaning make sure the people who need to sign, and the people who are looking to change the name of the street are aware of all the implications of that. So yes, I think our board is the correct board to sign off.
So we would approve this, and then again, the next step is what happens when we approve it? Do we notify the town clerk, and then someone has to put, that's when the next steps is that notices need to be sent out to everyone. Maybe a form that they send out to, whoever, they have their bills with, so they know what the street name changes. Something needs to go to the registry that says this street now formerly known as X Street is now Y Street. There's a lot of things that someone's got to do that at this point we're telling someone else now to do something. So I don't know if perhaps then we say, we've done this and we send it on to the town manager and then they handle it. Again, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be worked out.
That's really interesting, because when a subdivision goes through, yep, subdivision's approved, it goes on to the next level, and then the building inspectional services, building department has to approve the actual drawing. So thinking of that type of a process, once our board approves that, I think our board approves something different. I think our board approves that all the paperwork, everything is in order to the bylaw, that this this person who's approaching the town to have a street name changed has done all the due diligence that they're supposed to do. I think that's what our board approves. The mechanism of it going to DPW orders signs, all that stuff that gets changed on maps and all, I don't think that's what our board would do.
Well, then we need to send it on to someone, and then we need to figure out
Right.
who that would be.
Well, it would trigger the same as like when a new street name is created. I imagine it's the same group of people that would get the street signs, make sure the maps are updated and everything.
Well, for like a subdivision, that's a little bit different because once it's approved here and the plans are signed, they get recorded at the registry of deeds.
Mhm.
And then whoever wants to build the road then goes back to the DPW and says, okay, I'm going to start building this. And they say, oh, fine. You need to put a bond up to make sure it gets done and we're going to watch you. And that individual, which is not the town, is basically the one who does all the work.
Right.
In this case, it would be someone in the town who's got to do the work.
Agreed. And it's like that, you know, whether it's Montrose School Lane, Patriot Place, all these subdivisions that went in, Clyde Court, that part where the sign goes up and there's a post, I imagine that's DPW. I don't know for sure, but I feel like that's where the end part sits, with DPW making sure that it's finalized. That meaning the street sign is the correct sign. We as a board, I don't feel like in our bylaws should have anything to do with what the size of the sign is, the lettering, the color. I think we should avoid that completely. I'm sure we're all in agreement of that it should just default to the town's street signage.
And that is accurate. It is DPW working with Katie Lafferty, who does a lot of the GIS work and the naming of the streets connecting with the post office. So
Right. So Matt, back to it. I think our board is really just making sure that it goes to the public, that this form is completed, that the signatures are in place, that people have a chance to speak up at a public meeting, and then our board votes on it.
Okay.
Does it need to be a majority vote? I think so. I don't think it needs to be 2/3. I don't know. Maybe that's where we need to talk to town council, Tom Mullen, to find out if there's something state-wise that we need to abide by as far as a vote.
Yes, yeah, I'm not really familiar with in even other towns, if when this is done, what the next steps are.
Right.
And if we're going to be proposing this bylaw, I think we need to educate ourselves and give direction as to what happens once this is successfully done and we say, yes, we think this name change is worthy of being done. Is it done, or is it we move it on to town council and they just say, okay, and do they have a veto authority at that point? You know, that's the tricky part is, you know, is it officially done when we do it, or is it just a recommendation?
I know I keep speaking up, but I feel like our board just needs to make sure that everything on this document is in order. And we would vote that, yes, all this is, we would listen to the public and we would vote that, yes, our board either allows, votes in favor or not in favor, that the applicant has sufficiently completed all the paperwork, forms, whatever signatures they are required. And they've also, that we found that the public is in approval for the street, I guess. Yeah, it does get complicated.
So, I mean, there would be an appeals process, and that's when, like, if someone didn't like our decision, they would appeal it to the town council, and the town council would then deliberate.
Well,
So,
I mean,
yeah, that,
should there be an appeal I mean,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
I hate to get into appeals because, you know, the school department decided something and the entire town thought they had a right to say whatever they did is not right. You know, is that the way it should be? Just because 4 people on the street want to rename it, does that give anyone else in town standing to say, I don't like it, it's not going to happen? Is that a fair process?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if we want to, you know, there's another way we could do it is somehow we recommend it and it goes to a town meeting. You know, do we want town meeting voting on this? No. But there has to be a formal step at some point, whether it's
Right.
from us or we recommend it to town manager, town, you know, the town council, however, that's something we need to think about. So.
Yeah,
But-
Matt, I would say that I view this as, I know with most of the time it's not that big of, not that controversial except for the people on the street, but you know, I view anytime you're changing a name of something that's a public piece of infrastructure, I think it makes sense to have it for a town of our size. I would advocate that it goes through the process where we collect all this information, we validate it, we make sure the public's been informed, and then we refer the matter to town council for their formal approval. You know, and then from town council, they would be the ones who would, you know, formally say, yes, we agree to change the street name. But we would be referencing it with, you know, doing all the legwork on the front end, for the lack of a better term, and then sending it to them with a favorable recommendation. That's the way I think would make the most sense in terms of a process. And then obviously if town council's voting on it, there's also a greater line of sight in terms of some of those next steps in terms of the other departments. You know, I think that you bring up a lot of great points in terms of, you know, what happens after an approval process, but I think that having it come through our board, then being referred to town council with a favorable recommendation for action, I think that makes sense in terms of a process perspective. And I think it also has some benefits on the execution side once a street name is approved.
Yeah, I agree, because the town council works with the town manager. The town manager has fiscal, you know, resources to get this completed, whereas our board doesn't. So I think that makes sense.
And I also think that in terms of, you know, if we send it to for favorable recommendation to the town council, they are ultimately the ones who can adjudicate and, you know, approve or deny it. And then frankly, I think that my kind of view of our board is to validate that the applicant has followed the process in a manner that's consistent with what is the intent in terms of gathering the requisite number of signatures, and making sure that, you know, we're not necessarily adjudicating on the name change per se, but we're making sure that it goes to the town council with the making sure that all the boxes have been checked in an appropriate manner.
Well, it seems like you should have at least the 75% or 100% of fewer before it even gets to us. So I think coming out of us, it would be either you guys, it's either yay or nay, and if it's yay, then get it done. So I don't think they should be looking at it to see, oh, you only have 74.3% of or whatever. So I think once it's recommended out of the public hearing of, you know, authority, which would be us, then it's either they accept it or not and move forward with it. All right, so I'm going to work on this a little bit more. If anyone has any edits they want to add to it over the next couple of weeks, if you guys want to do that. It's just, I see it's getting close to 9 o'clock. I want to try to limit our exposure to non-sleep as much as possible. So I know Jim would appreciate it. Although he's at work, he's probably just going to nap right now and then go home. So all right, so item number 5, discussions of subdivision rules and regulations. I haven't done anything else with this yet. I don't know if anyone else has looked at it, has any comments. If you even want to discuss it tonight, or we'll bring it up again at future meeting. So I see by no response, move it, extend it to another meeting.
Yes, please.
Okay, sounds good.
And if
Um,
there's anything, I mean, between now and then, I don't mind reaching out to Tom Mullen if we think we're at a place where we want to ask specific questions. I could come up with some questions and then share it with you, Matt, and then shoot that off to Tom Mullen if that gives us a jump on process.
are you talking for rules and regulations revisions or the street
Yeah.
change?
Yeah, not the form, but thinking about what is the correct way, meaning does town council have final say on a street change name, like you were mentioning, if there is a prior or previous process or bylaw
Yeah,
that
if
you can help us with that.
if you want to see if he has any insight, that would be good. So,
Okay,
so just going back to the street name change. I truthfully thought this was going to be, we just take someone else's bylaw and tweak it and send it along. But, you know, the more you think about it, it's quite a process. Or we're just making too much of a process. I'm not quite sure. So. All right. So again, for subdivision rules and regulations, if you guys want to go through and take a look at what we have and make any edits, that's fine. I'm gonna get into this full subdivision and start just looking at what I see myself, and then we can bring this up and discuss it. So again, like I mentioned earlier, I do think any subdivision going forward that has a conservation component, that it needs to be filed simultaneously and working right from the start. It shouldn't be waiting until we go through one board and then we'll go to the next board, which is what has happened on the current set of documents that we're looking at. So, all right, item number 6, items not anticipated. I only have one. You guys got the submittal for the Lowell Street, the 356 Lowell Street. I'm pleased to see that the drive-through has been eliminated. I don't know if you guys have looked at that and if you have any comments on what's existing now to send along to ZBA, or you're fine with it.
I reviewed the plan. I agree with you, very pleased to see the removal of the drive-through. Based off the revisions, I didn't see anything that we needed to communicate to the ZBA, but I'm happy to hear what others have to discuss. But I was definitely happy to see the removal of the drive-through and the shift of the property, the parking spaces, the change in the cutout with the entryway and exit way. I think that'll alleviate things. The only one minor concern, but I think it's again minor, was there was 2 snow locations. One was like fine in the, I guess, I don't know what side that is, but in the top. But there was another one where it's mostly where they're looking to put in trees and shrubs, etc. So just want to make sure that that's not going to ruin that area with like the salt, etc. But I think that'll only happen if we have a giant snowstorm. So I was pleased to see the edits and changes, and I didn't see any issues or concerns to comment to the ZBA.
Okay. Take a quick look while you're. Yeah, one thing that I have noticed in town, that if you don't engineer it, so people can't do things, meaning if you don't have a curb up, people are going to start parking on grass and wherever they want. So you kind of have to basically force people to do the right thing. And I think we see that on the business across the street where I understand they're busy, but they've filled up their front lawn with vehicles, and it's really wasn't intended to do that. So I think going forward, the ZBA needs to really look closely at the way people are gonna get around. If they can't park where they're supposed to, they'll park wherever they can. Unfortunately, just take that out of the equation. So, but I myself don't see anything for us to comment on. So, but if anyone else has anything, I'm perfectly fine entertaining that. So, all right. That was my only thing. I did attend the discussion group the other night. Good work, Erin and Theo, for working on that. Unfortunately, we didn't get as many people there, but it was still good to hear everything. I know the breakout groups were a little smaller, and I know the one I was in was kind of dominated by a few people, so it was tough to get a lot of points across, but you know, that happens. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was nice. Where, I mean, like, what, 50 people participated, and yeah, so I'm sorry for my dog barking in the background. I think it's really important to note we can get more people to do the survey. We've got until what, April 27th is when this survey needs to be completed. And yeah, that's a bit, you know, the link is in yesterday's paper and also on the website, and you can get straight to it. Two of the things that I really took away from it were in the materials that they prepared, and the videos on the website. And Aaron, I think we'll get the slides posted to the website too. But in the video at the 10-minute mark and the 19-minute mark, they have some really useful discussion of the process for this, and then existing zoning conditions, where they give percentages of Wakefield's acreage by zone, and that I think was really informative, because we know implicitly it's 63% of Wakefield is single family or SR zoned, but you get down to it, 1% is mixed use. There's the mixed use overlay and things like that. So it's that does help, I think, start to, all right, this is what we got, and we can think about what we might like for the future. So that was really helpful. So I let those kinds of stats are really informative. We've got 3 more public workshops and 3 more surveys after this. And the next forum is about historic and cultural elements and about housing. So those are, I think, equally compelling topics. So, and I found moderating a group really, really fun. So I would, and useful, and I would encourage everybody to volunteer to do that too.
So do you know when the results of the survey are going to be coming out, or?
I don't know.
Yeah, so they're going to be incorporated with the final report, but usually they have them all in the report as well. But if you'd like to see them earlier, I'm sure we could ask to get them.
Okay, so it is all going to be in the final. It's not going to.
No, they
Release it
don't.
in
Yeah,
sections,
they
so.
usually don't post them. I mean, I can ask them to, but yeah, they don't usually post them until the final report.
All right. And if there's going to be any changes for zoning that seem to be popular or come out of it, is it something that would have to wait until the final report, or would it be
Yeah, that's
something
something
that?
we discussed. I think that's something again, with like the survey and based on the discussion that we had through the PowerPoint, I think it's something we could definitely look at earlier.
Okay, because I know we've been discussing this Lake District, and if we can, if there's a consensus, an early consensus that people want to see something done, if we can, get working on it now,
Okay.
I definitely think we should,
Okay.
try
Yep.
to do that. All right.
That sounds great.
Matt, can I ask that, so for future agenda items, that the master plan get its own section, at the very least, that way, then in the minutes that get published, or in the agenda that gets published, we can post links to the survey and things like that. I think that would just be another way of waving the flag and getting the word out. And then people come to the meeting A, and we say, all right, in 2 weeks, there's going to be another forum and then another survey, and that just helps gin up participation.
Yeah, we could do that. I think we just need to be cognizant that the whole master planning process is by the advisory group and not the board, because ultimately we're going to approve it with, as is, with modifications, whatever. So I'm always leery that people see that we're pushing some agenda and pushing the advisory group to do a certain thing when we want them to work on their own, and then, we'll evaluate it in the end. So, but I think posting, there's a next meeting's coming up, then we can certainly mention that. But I don't want us to have a lot of discussion. Oh, it wouldn't be nice if they talked about doing a certain thing in a certain part of town. I think that would not be appropriate. So.
Yeah, so maybe just master plan process, next, event dates, things, something to that. Yeah,
This
that'd be
is,
great.
this is, this is the next step. Here's a link, and, you can say a couple of words. This is coming up. This is what's anticipated. Nice to have some involvement. And we leave it at that. We don't get into a huge discussion about, oh, you guys should talk about,
Right.
a helipad or, whatever. Paving Lake Quantapowhat for an airport or something like that.
Yeah,
So
bravo.
draining Lake Quantapowhat, that would be good. So
Careful.
already out. So, all right. Anyone else have any items? Bill
Yes,
Spalding?
I do. I'm really excited to announce that we have a Safe Streets Wakefield website. So if you do go to safestreetswakefield.com, thanks to John Crisley, Julie Smith-Galvin, and Kara Showers, and a few others who have helped make this work. But we had a table at the Gator Gallop. I don't know if you galloped around the lake on Saturday morning before the hail, but it was really cool to be at the table and have people come by and talk a little bit about it. But if you check out the site, we have this summer 3 Sundays that, and I know I've mentioned this in passing, hoping as a dream, we're the northbound side of North Ave and the southbound side of Main Street will be closed off from like 12 to 4 on a few select Sundays for pedestrian access to roll, to have fun and play along the lake, just to see how that works. So Safe Streets Wakefield, it's a real thing now. We got a website.
All right, good.
Just wanted to add that.
What was the
Great,
website again?
congratulations.
Safe Streets Wakefield. Is it live? Yeah, safestreetswakefield.com.
It's not showing up in Google yet, so.
Well, I went from the link from the emails going back and forth. So you know what? It is possible it might not be public live, but oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
All right, I'll take a
So
look.
safestreetswakefield.com will get you there. Anyway, for the last year or so, we've been just as a page on Julie Smith-Galvin's website. but now we're separated from that. So I just wanted to add that. And again, Theo, thanks for, and Aaron, the planning of the master plan public, that went well. I really enjoyed facilitating, and Matt, everybody in our group got equal time. Was really happy. So
Good.
next
Glad
time,
to
maybe
hear.
you'll be in my group.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Item 7, motion to adjourn. Do I hear one?
Second.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in